The Entrepreneur's Library, Episode 2.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us today on the EL. Today we have Jesse Krieger, author of Lifestyle Entrepreneur. Welcome, Jesse, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Thanks, Wade. I'm really glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
Sure. My name's Jesse Krieger. I've never actually had a normal job. I've been an entrepreneur my whole adult life, starting in the music industry as a guitar player and record label owner, and moving through all manner of things from investment banking to renewable energy and Chinese flash drive production and many things in between. So summed it all up best as I could in Lifestyle Entrepreneur that we'll be talking about today.
Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty amazing spreadsheet. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let's jump right into the book, Lifestyle Entrepreneur, which was just made available from what I see on Amazon on June 3rd, 2014. Jesse, we're going to move quickly, but here are some of the top questions our listeners would love to get answered from you.
Sure.
So let's roll right away. What was the inspiration behind writing The Lifestyle Entrepreneur?
Well, the inspiration behind Lifestyle Entrepreneur was really looking back over the last 10 years when I was turning 30, a year or two ago, and thinking, wow, I've really done some diverse some really diverse business experiences and different industry focuses. And really, I guess it was the result of not knowing how to answer the question, what do you do? Because it changed frequently. And so I decided it started as a shorter piece, but then as I was writing and got additional inspiration, I decided to expand it out into a full book that's a mix of how-to and stories and strategies for success, as well as some featured lifestyle entrepreneurs that also embody this ethos. Really, to be able to travel freely and frequently, to live a life of passion and purpose, and be the prime mover, having agency in your life to create things in business and lifestyle-wise, identity-wise. So that's a little bit of the background and inspiration for the book.
Okay, excellent. What do you feel like makes your book different from others regarding this exact same topic?
Well, it's interesting that after writing the book, I thought, I have some really unique experiences. I've founded or co-founded over 5 companies, helped dozens of entrepreneurs start businesses. And so I bring a very much a firsthand perspective from being, quote, in the trenches at any given time, working on the starting, the launch or growth of 2 or 3 businesses. So I'd like to think that I know what I'm talking about, and I'm speaking from experience, but also to inspire and instruct. So I guess what makes it different is it's a collection of like firsthand account stories of being in different lifestyle contexts, mixed with how-tos and frameworks that readers can use to put into practice in their own life and businesses. And from my observation, I haven't seen too many other books out there that take that same tact with the level of detail and specificity, as well as sort of high-level topics like beliefs and identity. So it spans the gap from the really general to the very specific and tactical.
Absolutely. I love reading books too that like from what you're talking about, it's based off experience and not theory. And I went to college, but at the same time, that's what I always talk about, the college professors. A lot of them weren't, at least at the school that I went to, they were teaching off what they learned out of a book and not what they had done. So I love reading a book like yours where they're actually going to teach off experience and not something off a theory or something that you read out of a book.
Yeah, I mean, authenticity is huge for me, and credibility. So I agree with you, Wade. I don't have that much interest in reading a theoretical book about entrepreneurship when it's not really a theoretical subject, to be quite honest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now that we know a little bit behind the book, I would really, this is my favorite part where we can take a deep dive into your creation. I want to check out what's under the hood and kind of go, not that you have to go chapter by chapter, but really, I want to give the reader a great explanation of what they're going to get out of this book.
Great. Well, it kicks off the very first, even before the first chapter, the prologue is actually called From the Jungles of Borneo. And so I'm a big fan of just diving in to the heat of the moment, to the action. And so from the very first page, you're following my adventure. This book came out in Southeast Asia in a different form. And so I take you right into being in the middle of a book tour in Malaysia and literally hiking in the jungles of Borneo one day and then speaking on stages in front of 100 people the next, and pacing the reader through a firsthand account of what at least my life as an entrepreneur is like real time now. And then we dial it back a little when the main book content begins, after the introduction and all. But it starts with sort of a sweeping overview of how I see the world changing today, specifically with the ability to hire and manage teams from anywhere in the world, and the ability to work from anywhere in the world with a laptop and internet connection. And I think these two changes, which are both spring forth from technology and the internet, enable a different way of living and working. So I try and give people a firsthand account from the second they open the book and start reading. So from there, we go into a discussion of what I call discovering your identity and looking at becoming introspective and really getting clarity on your strengths, your areas of weakness, and getting clear on what it is that you'd like to be doing in an ideal situation in life, as well as taking stock of where you are now. All of that sets the stage for some more of the tactical information. So in the first part of the book, we go through identity and what I call the lifestyle entrepreneur's roadmap. So I have an exercise called the Discover Your Identity exercise that's bracketed by a discussion on two frameworks. One's the beliefs, thoughts, emotions, actions framework, which I call sort of the lifestyle framework. And the other is what I call vision map, MAP being an acronym for mission, action, plan, and product. And so with your vision map and the BTEA framework and the Discover Your Identity exercise, by the time you're, a third of the way through the book, the reader should have a lot more clarity on not only what's possible, but what's the ideal case for them. So it allows specificity for the reader without being prescriptive, without telling people what they should do, rather giving the opportunity for the reader to discover and empowering them to think bigger within the context of what's possible in this day and age. So from there, then we get a lot more specific into entrepreneurship. So after this discussion on vision map and beliefs and identity, then I lay out what I call the operations model, which is the lifestyle entrepreneur's business architecture. So it's really how to visualize setting up a business, whether it's offering a product or a service, in a way that it's transacted entirely online and that it's systems-based. So that, for example, I'm in Vegas now for a month, but here we are recording a podcast. I'll do some work later. I'll have a call with a client in another country. It really doesn't matter where you are in the world anymore, work-wise, from my perspective. So I lay out the architecture for how the reader can, after thinking big and visualizing what they want to create and do next in their life from a personal interest standpoint, giving the tools and the tactics to make that real from an entrepreneur's perspective. And then following that discussion, which involves, case studies from previous businesses that I've started, as well as some interviews and features with other very successful lifestyle entrepreneurs who truly embody this ethos. They travel 8, 9, 10 months a year, making 6- and 7-figure incomes with online businesses, And so I really want to give a sweeping survey of what's possible, some specific case studies, and then strategies, tactics, and takeaways that the reader can use and put into practice in their own life. Then I give a talk on productivity, and specifically what I call threshold theory, which is this idea of every time you sit down and work in a focused way, that you're crossing a threshold that moves your business or your lifestyle goals forward in a tangible way that's difficult to backslide. So making sure that each time you do a work session, you're making a quantum level of progress, and that becomes cumulative over time, and it builds momentum. So I give some productivity hacks, talk about threshold theory, and what I call the principle of the power hour, working in focused 1 hour bursts with a certain blueprint, which is described in threshold theory, depending on where you're at in your business. So it grows, it allows you to grow alongside the content of the book, and hopefully stays applicable from the first time entrepreneur through a seasoned serial entrepreneur who's wondering what to do next. And then as we get closer to the end, I give some very specific recommendations on tools, softwares to use, ways to set up a workflow. And so by the time you get to the end of the book, my goal is that the reader has an expanded view of what's possible in life and business, and now has the tools, resources, next steps, and action plans to make it real. And as we wrap up the book, I give I turn over the typewriter to a few people that have areas of tactical expertise in search engine optimization, copywriting, some of the tools that are necessary for online business. And so the entirety of the book is certainly a firsthand perspective of my own life and entrepreneurial history spanning 10 plus years, but also peeking into the world of others who will likely never write a book or won't be a face and a voice for this lifestyle, this approach to business. So it was very important for me to track them down and get them to share a little bit of their secret sauce, so that I could use some other references within the book for the reader's benefit.
That's excellent. Well, I'm looking through as you're going through. I'm looking through the table of contents, and I'm only maybe a third of the way through, and I can't believe how thorough you did on this book. I mean, how thorough it is. It's not just one side of things. It really does go through, and the case studies and everything. I mean, it just makes me that much more excited to finish it.
I appreciate that. It was certainly a labor of love. It wasn't something that I just popped out in a month or two.
Yeah.
It was actually a many months, if not years long process of writing, revising, editing, because I really care about this, and I really care about conveying to people the information that's in there. So I say in the conclusion that the book could have been easily a 500-page book. But who's got time to read a 500-page book, right?
I was just thinking that as you're talking about the contents of the book, I was like, man, this really could have been. He probably could have written 150 pages on everything that he just talked about, each chapter. So
yeah,
that's and I was also going to say I didn't want to cut you off at all while you were going through that. And so when you first started talking about the introduction of the book, I don't know how anyone reads an introduction to a book and stops, or reads one like the one that you wrote. I read that and immediately was like, I've got to stop and read the rest. I've got to continue.
Excellent,
so
excellent.
It was very intriguing. I couldn't stop.
I've gotten a few feedbacks and reviews from readers that said, I read your book in one night. I was like, holy cow.
I believe it, especially with the way you started. There's certain books that they start a little bit slow and they have good content, but they didn't really, just get you in the zone, I guess, get you in the flow from the very beginning as a reader. And this one does. This one definitely grabs your attention and won't let go. So I appreciate that. And then the second thing that again, I'm not all the way through. So I love a book that engages me and makes me write. I wrote a blog post the other day about how one of my professors taught me that you need two things to write, or to read, I'm sorry, a book and a pencil. And he said, you're not reading if you don't have a pencil in your hand, that you're not taking notes and jotting down. And I took that serious. And so I love a book that engages me, because I think the biggest thing that sometimes we lack is thinking. And your book causes me to think, and that's what helps. In my opinion, that's what helps me move forward. So I appreciate you, leaving the space and actually asking questions that had to cause me to think and then write.
That's great. That's great feedback. For somebody that is so passionate about online business, I'm still a huge fan of physical books for that same reason.
Yes.
To mark it up, tear a corner off a page, write something in the margins. I know you can do that stuff on Kindle and all, but maybe I'm old school and I'm dating myself here, but I definitely enjoy the print experience of a book. So I had that in mind, and I'm glad to hear you say that, Wade, because that is very much the intention of the book, to be, one, entertaining, two, informative, but really interactive. It's not a lean back and be entertained experience as much as it is getting the gears turning, getting ideas flowing, and then telling you, all right, do this.
Absolutely.
Answer these questions, think about this topic, etc.
Yeah, I have nothing against digital or audio. I think they both have their place, but the same with me. If I'm truly trying to create change in my life, and I'm truly trying to absorb a book as much as possible, oh man, I'm definitely getting the paperback. And it's going to look like it's going to have highlights. It's going to have my scribble marks. I love going back too. If you go back and look at books that you read 5 years ago and you're going to read them again, you were at a different point. You were in a different business. You were in a different, there's how you thought then and how you think now. You get to go back and actually look at who you were through that book, 5 years ago or whatnot. So I always love that experience too.
I think that's definitely the mark of a great book, that that as you grow, you glean new information, you get something different out of the same pages, and it stays relevant and applicable over time. So certainly all goals in the writing of Lifestyle Entrepreneur. And on the point of it could have been a 500-page book, but I was very fastidious about editing and keeping it fast-moving and really free of fluff. That's something I really don't enjoy in when people write just to fill more pages so that it, hits a certain page count. I took the opposite approach and just distilled down to the point where I couldn't cut too much more out without eliminating essential information. And
absolutely.
So I appreciate hearing from you and from other readers that it is engaging and keeps a fast pace. And keeps moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because my next question was actually had to do with that. And this one to me was pretty powerful. But if the reader could only take one concept or principle or action item out of the entire book, what would you want that to be?
I would unquestionably say that the one thing I would want a reader to take away from this book, and it's even printed on the cover in the form of a quote, is that you can go from not believing that this is possible for your life to firmly, fully believing that you have agency to create the lifestyle that you want, to build a business based on your interests and passions and structured in a way that you can run it from anywhere in the world. So if there's just one thing that you're going to take away, it's that this is possible, that it's been done, that this is both my life and many of my closest friends' lifestyle. And so opening a door to a new way of living and doing business and proving that it's possible. That's what I'd want the reader to take away. Obviously, there's much more, but if there's just one thing, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. This next question I like, because it gives you an opportunity to kind of, or hopefully brag on yourself. I know I don't do a whole lot of writing, but when I feel like I've written something good, I almost want to go show someone and be like, hey, look at this sentence, look at this, the structure, look how profound this is. But do you have a favorite quote? I guess is the easiest way for me to say it, or even it might be a series of sentences that you wrote in the book that you really feel like are impactful and powerful.
Yeah, here's one. So one of the identity framework I mentioned, one of the concepts is know, do, and be as a sequence. So learning what you need to know to do what you want to do so that you can ultimately be the kind of person that you envision. So the quote around that is on the topic of identity. It says, when you know what you want, it becomes clear what must be done. As you do, eventually you come to be, and that is your identity. So that's the quote. And really, it's a succinct way of saying that as you start with getting new information, new knowledge, then begin taking action, ultimately you take on or adopt a new identity. And that's when you're really present. And when people observe you in the role of your new identity, it becomes real. For example, before I released Lifestyle Entrepreneur, nobody interacted with me as the best-selling author of Lifestyle Entrepreneur. But once the book came out and had some success, and I began doing talks and podcasts and stuff like this, now it's a part of my identity. And that's just the most recent example of the main theme of the book, which is consciously creating your identity in business and life. And so I summed it up. I'll just say it one more time. When you know what you want, it becomes clear what must be done. As you do, eventually you come to be, and that is your identity.
That's excellent. It's almost one of those, you need to sit down for about 5 minutes and think about that.
Yeah, you can unpack that one for a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as an author, I think one of the biggest questions that I always have for an author who writes such an impactful book is, if there was just one book that you could recommend to our listeners based on the way it impacted your life, what would that be?
Well, on the topic of concise short books, this may sound out of context, but I would recommend that any entrepreneur read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I say it's out of context because it's like 1,200 pages, and the book really gets good at around page 700. But it's one of the only books that places the entrepreneur as a hero, places the industrialist, the businessman, as an ideal archetype to be that's almost sacred. And Ayn Rand was certainly somebody who evoked strong opinions on both sides of the aisle. You know, it's the second best-selling book after the Bible, and is perpetually on the bestseller lists. So while it's not an easy read or a fast read, it's a book that will truly impact and change your life if you let it. If you really get into the storyline and read between the lines on what the message is that it's conveying.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you for that. And Jesse, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing, your creation. I always call it, your baby, your creation with this avid reader, this listener base that we have. So, but I did want to say before we depart, can you recommend to our listening base, to the readers, the best way to get a hold of you or more information, I guess, about you and Lifestyle Entrepreneur?
Absolutely. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity, Wade. I love the focus of your podcast. It's refreshing to get to really dive into the content of the book. So very fortunate to be on your show. For everybody that's listening, I encourage you to check out lifestyleentrepreneurs.blog.com. So lifestyleentrepreneurs.blog.com. You can download the first few chapters of Lifestyle Entrepreneur for free there. There's also a ton of great training resources, videos, a lot of great content on the blog. I also would like to offer anybody that purchases a copy that's listened to this, get it on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. If you forward the receipt to me, jesse@jessekrieger.com, I'll send you 10 hours of video interviews and transcripts with some incredible lifestyle entrepreneurs, just as my gift for investing in yourself, in your future, and your success.
Wow, that's huge. Thank you again, and I look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
Thanks so much, Wade, and thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you would like to get your hands on Lifestyle Entrepreneur or any of the other resources mentioned by Jesse, just look at the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.